Good morning and welcome to Wednesday. Trusting that you had a peaceful night and that your Lenten journey is going well as you seek to go from strength to strength, as you seek to be open to all that the Spirit seeks to do in you, with you, and through you. We are here once again to be able to seek in some way to understand what God is doing with us. And we want to be able to find methods and ways of seeing God in our world, seeing how God is working with us, seeing how God is seeking to assist us in growing from day to day. And this is important for us as a people as we come into this time, as we seek to understand more and more what God is doing with us. So as we come now into this time of reflection and prayer, I want to invite us to, just as usual, to find our own space, our own place of quiet, remembering that we are at this time trying our best to be more internal than external. We're trying to allow these days to find us in a reflective mode. And I know what we have to go in the world, we have to engage with our work. Some of us have had to return to work face to face, in person. But if we can still be able to have that inner thing going on, which no one needs to know about, but just having an eye, as it was often said in the past when someone was leaving home and they would tell you, have an eye to my place. It didn't mean you had to sit down and look at it all the time. It just meant that, ever so often you sort of peep out the window and see if everything was all right. You just kept it in your awareness. And so that's what we're talking about as we go through Lent and as you engage the world, to have an eye within, to keep our awareness, some aspect of our awareness deep within us, so that at some point in time during the course of our day, we are able to have that sense as to what is going on with me. What is it that I need to learn or to know or to understand? So we come now in this time and we seek to, as usual, find our little pustina and make ourselves at home in the inner places of our heart. So come with me as I go within my secret place. I invite you to go within your secret place and to allow yourself to be guided step by step into that secret space. That place where you're able to know that you're not alone, that there is always the divine presence. So as we breathe into our heart at this time, we have that sense of gratitude. We take a few distinct breaths. And we look within. We are conscious of our inner thoughts. We're conscious of the way we feel within. We're reminded of the Savior in the wilderness, with only his thoughts, and the message is coming through from within. Practicing to listen, practicing to engage from within. And this is where we are now. We are practicing to engage from within, to not be caught in the idea of having to depend on the external all the time, but knowing that there is that opportunity for us to find our inner peace, our inner quiet. To be in one's own wilderness, to be in one's own secret space, where one is able to discern where one is being led. We need to know, we need to discover, because there's so many external voices in our world. So many voices telling us what we should do, what we should be, where we should go. And, in reality, this was always important for us, but because of how we lived, because of the fact that we didn't have as much information and we weren't engaging so many persons as we do now through the internet and all the connectedness that we have. In times past, we only heard a few voices, and we listened to those voices, and somehow they seemed to work. Society went on as it did. There were always a few exceptions, but there were enough going in the same direction. Now we are in an amorphous world, a world where persons are going in so many different directions, and they're all trying to get our attention constantly. And we are at times lost, and we don't even know that we're lost. But we are lost. We are lost because we don't know for certain which direction we should take. And oftentimes the go-tos that we used to use don't work anymore, because in some instances they seem to be as lost as we are. And so there is that inner confusion. And more often than not, we find ourselves acting out of fear. If we really examine some of our decisions and some of the steps we take, they're more about fear than they are about conviction or inner knowing. We live by fear. These last 2 years that we've gone through, we know this only too well. There's been so much fear. So much fear. And while it is that we could get through it and still observe whatever we need to observe, but without the fear, even though that's possible, we've tended not to, because we didn't go within to discern how we should go without. We just listened to what those on the outside were saying, with the many opinions and understandings, and we ended up being so fearful, so very fearful. So now we're coming to this Lenten time, and we're being invited and encouraged not to live by fear, but to go within and to discern that knowing which is important, that knowing that will assist us in this journey. So we, from deep within us, we allow a prayer to emerge. Your prayer this morning. What is coming from within you? What is the prayer that is bubbling up to the surface? Allow it to express in these next few moments. We listen to Mark now as he shares the story of Jesus. A leper came to Jesus begging him, and kneeling, he said to him, "If you choose, you can make me clean." Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, "I do choose. Be made clean." Immediately the leprosy left him and he was made clean. After sternly warning him, he sent him away at once, saying to him, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priests, and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded as a testimony to them." But he went out and began to proclaim it freely and to spread the word, so that Jesus could no longer go into a town openly, but stayed out in the country, and people came to him from every quarter. Here ends the reading. Jesus and those wonderful words that he offered to the leper. I always find this passage really touching. The leper presents himself and says, if you choose, if it is your will, if you want to, there's something you can do for me. And Jesus is touched by his words, and Jesus says, I choose, be clean. I choose. That little dialogue is touching. In many ways, it's touching because when we think of it in our own terms, and we look at those around us in their several situations in life, we can almost imagine persons who present themselves saying to us, if you choose, you can treat me differently than you treat me. If you choose, you can treat me differently than others are treating me. You don't have to be like the others. It's your choice. Remember, this is a leper that is coming to Jesus, and we know the story. They had to ring a bell and they had to claim that, unclean, unclean, unclean. But this unclean person says to Jesus, if you choose, you can make me clean. He's in a community where he must state that he's unclean. And he's understood as being unclean. But he sees a potential. He sees that he needs the help of someone else in order to realize his fullest potential. And so from his unclean state, he says to Jesus, if you choose. How often do we consider the fact that life is about choice? Virtually everything is choice. When we find that we're not making a choice, we should be alarmed. Because the moment I'm not making a choice, it means that I am perhaps operating from habit. And if I'm operating from habit, there's a good chance that I'm operating from a state of unconsciousness. I'm not being mindful. I remember back in the 80s when I first discovered this Buddhist monk by the name Thich Nhat Hanh. He is now deceased. And he came over to the West and he brought this message of the present moment and mindfulness. And everyone knows now that this idea of mindfulness is now a big thing in the world. But it was this little monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, that came over to the West in the 80s. And he was the 80s and into the early 90s. And he was talking about this mindfulness, present moment. And I remember he always gave this example. If you're cutting carrots, cut carrots. If you're cutting carrots, cut carrots. A powerful little simple message, but it means so much. How do we engage our world? Do we engage our world from a place of choice or from a place of habit? Do we operate from that which is the accepted norm? Or do we make a choice ourselves? Even though in reality, to behave from the accepted norm is also making a choice. It means that you're choosing to not make a personal decision. You're choosing to be like everybody else. And so in a sense, there still is choice. But it is more unconscious choice than conscious choice. This little dialogue with Jesus and the leper is about conscious choice. The leper presents himself to Jesus. He's not in the crowd. He's not lost among everybody else. And even that would be impossible because he wouldn't be allowed to be just among everyone else. He stands out. But his standing out, in one sense, is also a way of him being hidden, because being a leper, nobody's interested in the fact that he's there other than to ensure that he doesn't come anywhere near them. So his standing out is not of any great importance in this regard, but he stands out nonetheless. But he's not leaving it there. He's not leaving it to the usual methodology of standing out, the being discarded by everyone else. He stands out and presents himself in front of Jesus and challenges Jesus to make a choice. Who will you be? Will you be like all the others around here standing? Or will you be you? Who will you be? Jesus says, I choose. Reflect today as to where are the places in your journey where you've been called to stand out, to choose, where at times you might not have chosen, at least not consciously chosen. And see if we can make it your intention to always choose, to try to choose. Jesus chose, and Jesus made the man clean. When we make conscious choices, only God knows what great results might very well come about. But when we make unconscious choices, we get more of the same. But a conscious choice opens a new vista, a new possibility. If you choose.